You know those moments where someone achieves something, well, incredible with what looks like almost nothing at all?
Yeah, totally. Like impossible odds, simple tools.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today, you and I. These legendary wins using seemingly insignificant tools. Our source material for this is really, really interesting.
It really is. This deep dive gets into this fascinating idea of weaponizing the insignificant.
Right.
But, we're not talking Bond gadgets or anything.
No, no.
Instead, our source uses scriptural examples to show a different kind of power, a different kind of strategy.
Precisely. We've got these key stories, David, right? With his pebble and sling, Samson using a donkey's jawbone.
Wild, isn't it?
And then Jesus entering Jerusalem on a donkey. These things seem minor, but the results were huge.
Absolutely massive outcomes. And our goal here, as we explore this, for you listening, is to kind of pull out the core insights.
Yeah, what's really going on?
How do they leverage these small things?
Yeah.
And what can that possibly teach us about power, maybe strategy, leadership even, in our own lives?
It's about getting a fresh perspective, maybe, on challenges we all face. Seeing opportunities differently.
Exactly. A new lens.
Okay, so let's jump right into these examples then. They're pretty amazing. You mentioned David, this young shepherd, basically, facing Goliath, this giant warrior, with just what, a stone and a sling?
That's it. Seems almost foolish.
Right. Then Samson, he's cornered, and he grabs a donkey's jawbone.
Yeah.
And takes down a whole Philistine force with it.
I mean, the visual alone is something else. 1,000 men.
It's incredible. And then the sort of climax, in a way, Jesus, the King of Kings, arriving not on some magnificent war horse.
Oh, a glorious stallion.
But on a humble, ordinary donkey.
What's really striking, I think, is the sheer mismatch, right, between the tool and the result.
Totally.
A simple stone, a discarded bone, a working animal, versus a giant, an army, a royal entry.
It makes you stop and think, why? Why these seemingly small things for such significant moments? What's the principle here?
Yeah, what's the underlying logic, if there is one?
And our source really digs into that. It suggests it's actually a deliberate choice, choosing the simple, lowly, unnoticed.
Which is kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? We usually think strength comes from, well, obvious strength.
Yeah,
Might.
Exactly. And the reasoning presented, it gives us some key reminders, really, for you listening to.
Okay, like what?
First, the power isn't really in the object itself.
Right. The pebble isn't magic.
It's in the person using it. Second, victory isn't always about brute force, but about being aligned, maybe with a bigger strategy.
So alignment? Okay, I think so.
And third, leadership. It's not defined by dominance, but maybe more by humility, obedience even.
Those are really powerful points. Shifts the focus completely.
Yeah, and it even brings in 1 Corinthians 1.27. I think the source uses the King James Version.
Huh?
But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise.
Ah, yeah. That fits perfectly.
It really hammers home how what looks weak or, well, foolish can actually achieve these remarkable things.
Absolutely. And, to really get this, let's zoom in on one of these recurring symbols.
Right.
The donkey.
Right, the donkey.
Our source points out this animal, often kind of underestimated, right?
Yeah.
It shows up in some really key scriptural moments.
Yeah, you picture it as, I don't know, slow, maybe stubborn.
That's the stereotype.
But when you look at the details, like our source does, you find this animal with surprising, well, strengths.
Definitely. Like their load capacity. They can carry, what, 20-30% of their body weight? That's huge.
Okay.
And they're incredibly resilient.
Yeah.
Good in harsh terrains. Don't need as much water as a horse.
Think about what that symbolizes. Endurance, carrying burdens.
And practical stuff, too. They're really sure-footed, good on rough paths.
Reliable.
And it's not just physical. They have, like, emotional intelligence. They bond with people, have good memories. There's this quiet strength about them.
Calm under pressure, maybe. Unlike a, high-strung war horse.
Exactly. Very different vibe. And historically, kings actually use them. Solomon's coronation.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, one Kings mentions it. He rode on a mule, which is related. It projects a different image, doesn't it?
It does. Not quite the conquering hero on a charger.
And then, of course, the big one. Jesus entering Jerusalem on a donkey. That's pivotal.
So powerful.
And the symbolism in Jewish tradition was pretty clear back then. Horses often meant war, military might.
Okay.
Donkeys, though, were associated more with peace, domestic life, kingship in times of peace.
So when Jesus, the Prince of Peace, rides his donkey.
It's sending a massive signal. The nature of his kingdom, his purpose,
Mhm.
peace, not war.
So, okay, what does the donkey then symbolize in terms of like spiritual leadership? It's more than just transport, obviously.
Way more. It seems to embody things like stability under pressure, that quietness of spirit we mentioned, a sense of service, availability, just being there ready to do the job.
Undervalued strength.
Totally. Strength that's easily dismissed, but incredibly dependable. And ultimately, like with Jesus, it signifies carrying something profound. Prophetic leadership, even. Carrying the king.
Wow, that really adds depth to that image. Okay, let's pivot to the other big example, Samson. And the donkey jawbone.
Yeah, the jawbone.
I mean, talk about an unconventional weapon, defeating an army with that.
The sheer improbability is just staggering.
Yeah.
One bone, 1,000 armed soldiers.
So why that? Why a jawbone? What does the source suggest?
Well, a few things stand out. First, availability. It was just there.
Yeah.
What Samson could grab in that moment.
Right place, right time, or wrong time for the Philistines.
Second, it was literally something dead and discarded. Useless, you'd think.
Okay. Insignificant on multiple levels.
Exactly. And third, just the sheer unexpectedness. Who considers that a threat?
No one. It's almost absurd.
Yeah.
Which makes the victory even more stunning.
And the symbolism, like you said, a dead thing, from an animal often seen as lowly, it's potent.
Truly is. So the insight here, it's profound, isn't it? That even stuff we see as useless, things others throw away,
Yeah.
can become powerful instruments in the right hands, or maybe in the divine plan.
It totally challenges how we view potential, doesn't it? Where power comes from.
So the takeaway isn't like, go find a jawbone,
Huh? Probably not practical.
but it's more about recognizing the potential in what's already around us, what we already have.
That's exactly it. Our source draws out some really practical lessons here. Like, don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect resources.
Use what's in your hand now.
Right. And don't despise those small beginnings, those seemingly insignificant tools. The impact can be way bigger than you think.
Don't judge by appearances.
Definitely not. Because victory, real strength, it often shows up in surprising ways, maybe driven more by grace than by, obvious might.
Which brings up a bigger question.
Right.
Why are these unconventional strategies, pebbles, jawbones, donkeys, why are they actually so effective? It seems backward in a world that values big and powerful.
It does seem backward, but maybe that's the point. Our source suggests a few reasons why these approaches work so well.
Okay.
First, they tend to remove ego.
How so?
Well, if you're relying on a simple pebble instead of, say, advanced weaponry or a complex plan, it's harder to get puffed up about your own brilliance or strength.
Right, you can't really brag about your amazing sling technique that much.
Exactly. It kind of naturally points away from yourself.
Makes sense. It shifts the focus.
Which leads right into the second point. These methods seem to invite or make space for a greater power to get involved.
Okay, like less self-reliance means more room for something else.
Precisely. When we're not totally dependent on our own strength, our own complex strategies, there's just more openness. It's a posture of dependence, maybe. Trust.
Interesting, like stepping aside almost?
Sort of.
Eh.
And finally, the third thing is that these seemingly insignificant tools often quiet the noise.
Quiet the noise.
Yeah. Think about it. A pebble is silent until it hits. A jawbone makes no sound on its own. A donkey isn't a thundering war horse. There's a stillness there.
Clarity in the quiet.
Exactly. And that stillness, that clarity can be incredibly powerful, especially when everything else is chaotic. It lets a different kind of strength emerge.
Okay, this is fascinating. So let's bring it home. What does this mean for us, practically speaking?
Yeah.
What are the leadership lessons we can actually take away from these analogies?
Or the actionable stuff. Our source highlights some really good ones. The first is pretty straightforward. Use what's in your hand.
Okay, don't wait.
Don't wait for the perfect setup, the ideal budget, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you have right now? Your voice, your pen, a conversation, an idea, your platform. Start there.
That's really empowering, actually. It takes away the excuse of not being ready.
Exactly.
Oh.
The second lesson is crucial. Don't mistake simplicity for weakness.
Yeah. We often think complex is better, smarter.
We do. But the source argues that simpler strategies can actually pack a bigger punch. They're easier to grasp, easier to execute.
Simplicity converts, complexity confuses. Something like that.
That's a great way to put it. Simplicity can cut right through. The third lesson. Embrace the quiet strength of the spirit.
Like the donkey.
Exactly. Like the donkey, the jawbone, the pebble. Real power, lasting power, often isn't loud or flashy.
It's consistent, underlying.
Yes. Things like prayer, presence, purpose, inner conviction. Those steady, quiet forces.
I like that. Quiet strength. And the last one,
The final leadership lesson kind of ties it together. Lead with peace, not performance.
bringing back the donkey versus the war horse.
Precisely. It's about purposeful movement, like Jesus on the donkey heading towards his destiny, rather than just noise and showmanship.
Performance for performance's sake.
Right. It's about intentional direction, grounded in purpose, not just striving for applause or displays of power.
This all loops back beautifully to the spiritual dimension, doesn't it?
It really does. Our source makes these wonderful connections. Prayer, it suggests, can be like that jawbone, surprising, powerful, maybe arising from a place of need. Stillness, that quietness we talked about, can be like the pebble, small, focused, but capable of bringing down giants. And faith. Faith can be like the donkey's back. Steady, reliable, carrying the presence of God, maybe, to places we couldn't reach alone.
That's a really rich way to view those practices. And it touches on this idea of priesthood that the Sork mentions.
Yeah, and maybe we can understand that broadly here, not just strictly religious, like wielding authority that comes from a different place.
Not from force.
Exactly. Not from might or position in the worldly sense, but from that secret place, that inner connection, that alignment we talked about.
Which makes perfect sense with the quote you mentioned earlier from Zechariah.
Right. Zechariah 4.6, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord.
It perfectly encapsulates this whole theme, doesn't it? True power working through unexpected, often seemingly insignificant means.
It really does. It's the core message.
So, okay, let's wrap things up. As we finish this deep dive, what's the main thing you think our listeners should take away from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. We live in a world that really values, visible strength, complex strategies, speed.
Bigger, faster, louder.
Right. But there's this incredible, profound power available when we lean into spirit, when we walk in simplicity, when we act with a kind of supernatural boldness, using what seems small.
It's a real paradigm shift, encouraging too.
Very.
It suggests that the things we might just dismiss in our own lives, maybe a small talent, a quiet habit, a simple idea, a relationship we overlook,
Yeah.
those could actually be the very things God intends to use for significant breakthroughs,
Right.
for real impact.
Absolutely. The potential is often hidden in plain sight, in the seemingly insignificant.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is a question.
Ooh, okay. Provocation.
What seemingly insignificant resources or maybe qualities, gifts might you be overlooking right now? What small thing in your hand or in your heart could actually hold unexpected power for your current situation?
It's a great question to sit with. What's your pebble? What's your jawbone? What's your donkey?
Something definitely worth reflecting on.